Hello and welcome to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Make sure you find the Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe, and please rate and review the show. Reminder, we're streaming live on Sportsnet's YouTube channel and airing live on Sportsnet 360 Monday to Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. I'm your host, William Liu. I'm joined by producer and co-host Alex Wong. Definitely calmed down a lot from last night's reaction podcast.
Thank God.
That was tough. I was listening back to it just because I was like, did I imagine how upset I was?
You were very upset.
And then I listened back to it and I was like, my voice is 2 octaves higher than it typically is. So yeah, definitely woke up and my mood is a lot better. So Alex, how you doing in the morning after that loss?
No, it's all funny to me at this point, to be honest, because I was thinking about how yesterday we were in here talking about how Raps need to go 4-0. I believe that was your stated objective on this homestand. 4-0.
It was indeed my stated objective.
And I had to let you know there's at least one disappointment, and we already hit that quota.
This is the wisdom that you gained throughout the course of your 30s.
I believe I also guaranteed a win at some point during the show. So, apologies to anybody who was on Bet Rivers for that. But Gary was out last night. Precious was out. Scotty.
Yep.
And from practice today, none of them participated. So they're all considered questionable for tomorrow against Detroit as well. But like you mentioned yesterday on your React pod, that's no excuse for how they came out. That's no excuse for how they play defense. That's no excuse for the shot selection. That's no excuse for losing this game that they could have won in the second half at home. And like they got our hopes up.
Fam.
They got our hopes up last week. Very encouraging 3-1 week, right? We've been talking about them needing to put together an impressive week. And I thought even with the loss to Milwaukee, there was good momentum coming into this homestand. And I don't know, they just threw it all away last night. They threw it all away.
Yeah, I think.
Is that too much? Or?
No. I think when you look at the overall scope of the season, like again, there is an alternate universe where we look at that game and we're like, okay, Indiana shot the ball phenomenally, right? There were at least 3 or 4 sequences where the Raptors blocked a shot at the rim.
Yeah. Phenomenally, by the way, they shot 55, 52, 84 from the field yesterday.
A lot of teams shoot 50 against the Raptors.
That's Kevin Durant numbers.
Yeah. Man, that's how I'm feeling, man. Salute to producer Derek. We instructed him to do that. Okay, we gave him our explicit permission.
He's a friend. Derek's a friend of the community.
Absolutely,
because he says we stole the Chinese bakery thing from the Portuguese. Anyways, yeah.
Okay, all right. What was I saying? Yeah, I mean, look, like yes, you can say on an alternate, like yes, they had a couple breaks go away. The Raptors blocked a bunch of shots. They were able to put them back a lot of those times.
Yeah.
That would be true if you didn't see the whole season for the Raptors.
Yes,
as a whole.
Exactly. This would be
true. They have lost.
This would be
12,
true
15
if it wasn't game 73.
Yeah.
If this is game 7 of the season or something like that. And by the way, they did that in game 7 of the season. I'm pretty sure if you pull up the schedule. This was around when they got blown out by OKC on the road for no reason. But it's like, yeah, exactly to your point. Like this is exactly what we've seen throughout the season. And we thought, listen, acquisition of Jakob Poeltl, me pulling up net ratings for the first time in 6 years, looking at all the positives and stuff. And I just wanted to put so much hope, so much positivity into this final stretch of the season. And last night was just a reminder that this is the team that they are this season.
Yeah.
Like this is the team.
It's unfortunate. Again, you needed to take all 4 of these, right? And if you took all 4 of these, you might be feeling a lot more comfortable. A night like last night, for example, Atlanta ends up losing at the very end to Minnesota.
Yep.
You have a chance to now match them in the standings. Now, of course, I don't think the Raptors have the tiebreaker, so I don't think they would have jumped them. But still, like, you have a chance to sort of climb above. Like, Atlanta has literally been sitting there for 2 months at 500.
Yep.
Just waiting for some team to surpass them. Just waiting patiently.
No, they've been inviting anyone to pass them.
Yeah, but then, the Raptors just weren't able to take advantage last night. And I would say that, from the performance last night, the positives for me, I mean, it was cool seeing Pascal take over in the fourth quarter. I mean, he had 18 points in the fourth, 6 of 8 shooting. He played the entire fourth quarter, went 6 of 7 from the free throw line, had an assist, had a block. Like, as much as he can do, and we definitely did have a long discussion about, what the Raptors have sort of done in crunch time earlier this week on Tuesday, and we talked about sort of different options, and we acknowledged the fact that, Pascal had not been playing his best basketball in the fourth quarter, and a lot of times you don't feel his impact as much. You can't say that about last night. Pascal's taken over, and my whole thing was just like, okay, sometimes you come out slow. Obviously there's a lot of excitement in the crowd. Once again, tons of family and friends in the building for O'Shea Brissett, for Andrew Nembhard, for Benedict Mathurin. Like, these guys all had homecomings last night. After the game, they had like 3 sections of fans.
Oh, that's amazing.
It was really, really nice to see while I was screaming in the 600 level. I wonder if they could hear me.
First time in NBA history, by the way, 3 Canadians started.
And I thought, by the way, that was such a cool move by Rick Carlisle. Apparently, he actually went to go speak to Aaron Nesmith, and he was like, hey, this is my plan. I want to give O'Shea the start because of this whole idea. Are you cool with it? And he was like, absolutely.
He's like, I'm Aaron Nesmith. Yeah. I'm going to have to be cool with
Okay,
this.
well, fair. But my thing was just like, that's actually the sign of good team culture, right?
Of course.
That's a great team culture
Like
move.
you mentioned in the Rackpot too, and you can tell by just watching, and not just the Pacers, but other teams, like a lot of these teams play more together. Lot of these teams play more together. And it's super concerning to me that when you have one starter out in Scotty, and when you have the 2 guys coming off the bench and Gary Precious, when you lose that, like how is it that we fall so far? How do we go from having such a good starting 5, since acquiring Jakob, and then suddenly when you just remove one component and then you remove 2 more off the bench, that we just revert back to this? Like, I think it just speaks to just deeper problems with this team.
Yeah, no, for sure. Look, listen, there's the lack of depth is pretty evident. Like,
yes.
Honestly, you might just look at it as, look, the Raptors didn't have 3 of their 9 rotation players last night, and if that happens, they're not going to win because they don't have rotation players ready in the waiting to fill those spots.
They could have won. They could have won last night.
But they still could have won last night. And that's the thing to me, is just like the way they started the game defensively was so disappointing. The very first possession, the Raptors give up a wide open 3. Like, and it wasn't even like the Pacers running complicated offense or anything. Like, they're easing into the game. It's literally the first possession.
And they were missing Tyrese Halliburton, on their side.
He was taking step back logo 3s for fun.
Oh, word? Oh, pregame?
Pregame. Like, me and Vivek were watching it, and we were just mesmerized. The fact that he has such a quick release, it's obviously unorthodox, but he gets the ball up there. It's a really great arc, and he's just making so many shots.
Oh, he thinks he's me. Yeah,
he's hitting from the logo before the game, and I was like, oh, he's questionable. I'm feeling questionable about this game. Then I was relieved that he wasn't in the game again, and I was like, okay, well, at least there's not that to deal with tonight. And all of a sudden, you still see that kind of effort, which, to me, it's just like defensively, they need to be a lot better. Like, when you watch back on the film, so many of those are just miscommunications. Guys are really taking their assignments. Even when they had to shift the zone, like the first possession, they shifted the zone. The Pacers were like, oh, it's a zone. So they like shifted the ball around side to side a little bit. They weren't really sure where to go. And then all of a sudden, there's this huge gap, because if you're playing zone, you should have 2 guards sort of like almost standing just like at the elbow extended, or both elbows, right? And you should prevent, that drive through the middle.
Yeah, which is the whole point of the zone.
Right, and the first play, they go to the zone. The ball rotates out to TJ McConnell. There's a huge gap. Like, both guards are suddenly guarding the wing, and there's nobody in the middle. TJ McConnell runs in and throws in a little floater. And whatever. And then,
Bob
Cousy
in 4K, man.
But like,
Bob Cousy in 4K.
I just like that can't be the first shot you give up.
But this is the thing. How, like, you watch these games, you watch these games back. You've seen so much of this year. Like, even just watching these first quarters. Like last night, giving up 36 points, trailing by 10 after 1, and like you pointing out all these, them going to zone and not being able to play the zone properly. Like, what are all those extra practices for? What is all that extra practice time that you guys put in and talk so much about? And what is all the, attention to detail, all this stuff that is preached? Like, we've just gotten to the point of the season where we just have to accept that this is the season.
Yeah, I guess so. Right.
This is the season.
Again, like, if you are in a different mood, right? Like, you're late in the season here. You got to make that push, right? How much do you really want to extend your season? How much do you want to make that push to make the play-in, win the play-in, get into the playoffs? And then, as Nickner said, be a hard out.
We might hit a flush on the river.
Right? How much do you want to hit the runner and his flush, right?
We might hit the flush.
Like, what is the commitment to that? And if that is the commitment, then how do you come out with the game like that last night? Again, that game was just sitting there for you. Even with Indiana playing well to start, I was like, okay, yeah, they are hitting some shots as well. That's fine. At a certain point in the game, they're going to start to play badly, and they turned the ball over a lot last night. And some of that you might say, okay, that's the Raptors defense. They're good at turning the ball. They're forcing turnovers. They let you back into the game. And even in the third quarter, when Indiana had the momentum, then Pascal really came on really strong and found Malachi Flynn ultimately for a 3 that put them up 73-71. I was thinking, okay, here we go. Okay, yeah, you started sluggishly, whatever, but that happens, right? Now all of a sudden your best players are playing like your best player. Yep. Malachi Flynn for some reason is in the game and he's actually doing decently. Okay, cool, I'll accept that. And let's now be serious and finish this game. You've now taken the lead, and now you can put this opponent away.
Kind of like the Minnesota game from last weekend in a way. It's like you got a chance to just pull away in the second half and just take care of it.
And in the Minnesota game, Minnesota was coming out the second half of back-to-back, so they were tired and they played double overtime. There's no fatigue excuse for the Toronto Raptors. They were coming off of, what, two games off?
Yeah.
Maybe even 3?
What happened at the Rap City Social, man? We need an insider report. Guys got hurt.
So how do you come out with that little defensive energy? Are you desperate to go to the plane or not?
But that's what I'm saying. The lack of focus, all this stuff, like it's beyond, the X's and O's, all this stuff you want to talk about. It's just the overall team approach.
Right.
The overall team approach is just missing this year.
And the confusing thing to me, and probably is to, people who are much smarter and in much more of a position to make a decision, is like, how much of this is just rotten to the core and how much is it like, do you not want to throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing? Where it's like, I do see that there is talent on the team. I do see that when they play well, when they play together, when they, play the way they're designed to, they can have good results.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, what is the cause for some of the games where they just completely bottom out like that? Like there are standards that just don't really get upheld. Right. You look at the game that OG Anunoby's had, for example. OG's been awesome recently, right? He's been efficient. His true shooting's been like 70%. He's been catching and shooting for threes, and he's been knocking those down. He even started being featured in the offense a little bit. He was making those shots. He was obviously doing a great job defensively. We're like, wow, look at OG Anunoby. He looks amazing. Please, someone go back and look at the 2 of 13 performance and the decisions on offense that went into that. Right. Anytime OG Anunoby stole the ball, he was not passing that ball afterwards.
Right.
Like why? Right? Like, why? Like, is the goal to sort of win the game, or is the goal to sort of like, what are the other goals in, right? Because I thought last night, for example, Raptors didn't involve OG Anunoby at all in the first quarter. Like, he barely got the ball. And the times he got the ball was he stole the ball.
Yeah.
Right? But, like, at the same time, maybe that's just how the game is going, right? But can we sort of, like, play together and play to win? And when you look at the 2 of 13, it was a very ugly 2 of 13. That was something that I didn't really highlight that much in the React Pod because I was so focused on the fact that Fred came back into the game. Nick put him in 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and he went 0 of 3 from 3, had a turnover as well. And that turnover probably should have been a block.
Yeah, this was the review.
I don't know.
Didn't get over.
I don't understand if the defender is still moving into that position. Is that not a block? That's the definition of a block. But okay, they called it a charge and they reviewed it and it was state a charge.
Yeah,
but Fred came
Josh Tiven.
Fred came back into the game 0 of 3 from 3, and you looked at the 3-point attempts. They're all pull-up threes. They're not like open threes, and they're all not like. And they're all plays where it's just like the Raptors were in a one-possession game. Yeah. And it's like I get from the perspective of, okay, Fred wants to take that big 3 and sort of like, pop the roof off from Scotiabank Arena. Obviously everyone was so hyped last night for sure. But those are bad shots to take. And you know what? In a different context, I'm like, okay, if the whole team's struggling and Fred, jacks up a 3 here or there, I'm okay with that. Pascal was cooking in the fourth quarter. If there was any plays where Pascal didn't touch the ball in the fourth quarter last night, and again, he had 18 of the Raptors' points on 6 of 8 shooting, was 6 of 7 from the free throw line as well, and he was being a willing distributor as well. How is he not touching it every single time, right? Are we trying to win or not?
No, I hear you.
Like we have to play as smart as possible to win, especially when you're coming from behind.
I think when you have those advantages,
don't understand.
With Pascal, like the 17 shots in the 40 minutes is just not enough. Fred too. I know Fred's been playing really well, but the shot selection was really tough last night. Like you highlighted, and again, I think this is another common problem that has like permeated the team throughout the season, and it's like a bigger issue that I'm worried about. Is like there's a lot of great. I don't know if I would say great, but like individual scorers, guys who want to be individual scorers in this league, get their shots. Like, do they have just too many of those guys?
No, they have not enough.
No, but like that's the problem, right? They don't have enough scoring, but at the same time, the distribution is not making sense. Like this is the team that doesn't always make the extra pass, et cetera, all of that stuff. And when you watch the games, you just see it. You see it permeating through all these guys. And I know it starts with a joke of like, Gary never passes during the fast break, but there's truth in those things. And then when you start watching the offense, like you just see it. Like you just see it with this team.
Yeah.
And that's so frustrating.
And listen, I'm not even expecting the Raptors to be a juggernaut team offensively, but can we guard better, right? Again, like Indiana.
How do they have too many guys who want to score, but then like nobody who can score? That's the worst combination.
No, man.
And then Malachi is the breaking case of emergency for Nick when he wants 6 points in 2 minutes. Like, please, someone score.
I just don't understand. Like, listen, I'm okay with the idea that the Raptors gave Malachi a chance and the strength are what they are, right? He's been in the program for 3 years. Even if you haven't seen it on the court in games, you probably saw it at some point in practice. And if you decided you're out on him, that's fine. But if you're Nick Nurse and you got to look down the bench, and you're like, all right, Malachi, we need you tonight. Like, can you look him in the eye? Like, really? After you benched him like 5-6 times within a single season,
we talked about this.
Like, hey, man, we're gonna need you. Get out there. Like, I wouldn't be able to look a man in the eye after that.
We talked about the backup point guard problem, and look at the 3 guys who played last night. I mean, Will Barton was a starter last night because of the injuries, but he has 4 points in 23 minutes. 2 of 8. Missed,
that
missed
one
all
3
5
he
of his
missed in the
threes.
third quarter where he was wide open and it just only hit backboard. I don't get it. And by the way, here's the thing. I don't want to be mean to this because we've seen Will Barton play and be a successful player in the course of his career, right?
There's no doubt
about
NBA
that.
career.
He can score, and obviously he's shooting a lot lower than his typical averages. Mm-hmm. But even when I'm watching him in practices, because I love to watch players just shoot warm-up jumpers, right?
It's
actually like it's a real thing I do.
It's a sickness.
Pre-game, I'm there at 5 o'clock, right? I see everybody come through and warm up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then at practice, when I'm there, I'll watch whoever's shooting afterwards. Will's been missing a lot.
Yeah.
Like a lot. It's not a consistent, like you can tell the difference between a really consistent shooter. Like, for example, like Tyrese Halliburton, right? Watching him warm up, and he didn't even play last night.
Yeah.
I don't know, probably made like 70% of his threes. And he was, for a stretch, they're taking logo threes. The shots look consistent, the arcs look consistent, everything looks flow. Like for Will, he hasn't been shooting well even in warm-ups. And even in practice. In practice, there's another benefit where they have the big board where they show the NOAA analytics. Even those are inconsistent, right? Yes, sometimes you miss, but out of the 3 categories there, usually if you're missing one of those categories are fluctuating, right? And again, I'm not saying I'm seeing all of it. I'm sure the coaching staff has seen way more data, and the analytics team has seen much more of it. But even just watching some of those things, it's like you don't get the impression that he's a knockdown shooter. Given that, though, he still just has not been able to deliver results, right? I thought him starting the starting lineup last night was a great chance for him because of the fact that, okay, if you're coming off the bench and you're asked to create your own shot, obviously you're going to be much less efficient. Now you're in the starting group with Pascal, with Fred, with OG. Like, these guys can create for others, or even Yak can dive to the rim and make the extra pass. Like, you should get more open shots. And even the most open shots, he wasn't making those. Again, he had the wide open 3, he hit the backboard, and the Pacers went the other way, and Buddy Hield hit a 3. And that's just one possession, but that's 6 points.
Yeah. Well, they lost by 4. Yeah. So, like, that's a lot. No, but we've been saying all year, like, this team is not good enough to be wasting these possessions. Like, this team needs guys to be able to hit threes. Like, again, last night, only 2 guys hit 2 threes or more. Fred and Malachi. And that's the tough thing. It's like Will Barton, like I know I joked earlier this week, like what does Will Barton do? But it's like, if he's not going to be making shots out there, then okay, maybe you go to your other option. So you go to Malachi and he gives you 18 minutes, scores a couple of threes. But like
Malachi Flynn was closing the game for us.
Yeah, we've talked about Malachi at length and all this stuff. But like this is about as much as you can expect from Malachi if you bring him in, right? Maybe give you a little scoring burst. And then Jeff Down Jr., which like I advocated for, over Will Barton. But like, what are you expecting from Jeff Down? Like he gives you 6 minutes last night. Minus 5 in 6 minutes. Like Jeff Down's not going to save the day. I think on a fully healthy squad, like maybe he can play a role coming off the bench. But again, you look at all these options, and none of these options is going to help you swing anything.
Yeah.
And when 3 guys are hurt, you need your other top 4 guys, Pascal, OG, Jakob, and Fred, to all play at a really high level, and you need to play defense, and that didn't happen last night, and they lose. And if the injuries continued, like it's a toss-up against any team. Like this Raptors team versus any team, when they're playing like this, it's a toss-up. Like it doesn't matter what the competition is. It doesn't matter if it's Detroit or Indiana, Miami, Washington.
Yep.
Like I don't know. I'm super concerned about this homestand now. But the good thing about being in the play-in tournament is you can usually just start the day in 9th, have a terrible game at home, and just finish the day in 9th.
Well, that's the thing. When you're having a mid-off, your opponent is also mid, so you're actually okay with that. By the way, I just paused to double-check this because I was like, am I sure this happened? Malachi Flynn played – he checked into the third quarter at the 7-minute mark, and he checked out of the game in the fourth quarter at the 3-minute mark. So we're talking about Malachi Flynn, who has not played for he's consistently out of the rotation, comes into this game, and all of a sudden he's now playing 15 straight minutes for you.
Yeah.
And all of that was in a 1-possession game. By the way, he played his role decently. There's no complaints about Malachi at all last night. But my point is just man, you just got to be really prepared if you're on the Raptors. It could be anything or it could be nothing. By the way, I think the other thing too with the Raptors is just how many spots on the rotation are you getting very little to no production from?
Yeah, that plus how many of those positions do you not know what you're gonna get on a night-to-night basis?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, even the star players are kind of inconsistent. Like, I thought Fred played a great first quarter, and afterwards, I don't know.
How many games this season have you thought, like, oh, this was just an overall well-played game? Like, even in the wins, right? This is how the bingo card originated last week.
By the way,
of all the inconsistencies.
since you put that bingo card together,
yes.
And by the way, Raptors PR, that was all Alex. He's the producer of the show. He comes up with the topics. All right. Well, most of the time he does.
He books the guests.
I don't book the guests either. It's all Alex. Actually, this show has my name on it, but it's 90% Alex. When you put that bingo card together and you put Jakob Poeltl gets postered.
Did you? Yeah, you interviewed him the next day.
No.
Oh, okay.
It's not that. It's whatever. I'm sure you didn't see it.
That should have been the free bingo space.
No, every single game I have seen since that bingo card comes out, he has been postered.
Well, you know,
and it happened last night with O'Shea Brissett, which, by the way, the Raptors again in a one-possession game. Yak rises up for the rebound. Yeah. He's there. Pascal's there as well. He didn't get the rebound, but he's there. Yeah. And all of a sudden, O'Shea Brissett jumps over both of them. Yeah. Grabs the rebound out of Yak's hands. It goes out of bounds. The Raptors are defending a baseline out of bounds. The inbound goes to O'Shea, and he cuts the basket and posters Jakob.
Yeah,
and posters him so hard.
Gets the technical. Yeah. Which, by the way, they got to stop calling that, man. Like, do you expect a guy to dunk on someone and just, not celebrate?
They want everyone to be Kawhi. They actually want everyone to be Kawhi.
Who also picked up a tech this week.
Doing what?
You didn't see Kawhi pick up a tech?
No, I didn't see it.
He was just complaining to the ref, but the ref apparently said, my bad after and apologized to him. Refs are so down bad.
Hey, man, just give him a tech, man. But my point is,
yes, your point, yeah.
Those are the plays you need. Yeah. There are so many little plays not made. We have these bigger conversations of, do the Raptors have a star? Did they have the rotations right? Is the right coach for the team? Is it the right system? All these things. These are big picture things. And then when you look at the game, you look at the micro, and you're just like, I don't understand.
But listen, that's a conundrum for me, because like I love the Jakob Poeltl pickup, and I know at the time of the trade deadline it went against everything that fans were expecting and a lot of people watching the team wanted. So I have no problem with the Jakob Poeltl pickup adding to this team, but like they still need to look at it big picture and just look really at this collection of players and be like, does this group work moving forward like long term? But the talent is there, I agree with you, but it's just these performances are so like inexplicable. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't line up.
Well, here's the thing: you can't replace all the talent, but if you can get a different culture in where you can just like nail the little things, right?
Right.
At the start of the season, I felt very strongly about what Raptors culture was, quote unquote.
Yeah,
right?
And then now we've lost it. And now there's no culture to hang on to.
The reason they lose is because of obviously the bigger thing, but the smaller things is just they lose on small possessions like that. And there's like 9 or 10 of those every single game.
But that's
I'm
what I'm saying. That's how you lose.
To nail all of those, but a serious team does nail all of those. That's how you stay competitive. Yeah. There's no reason for the Raptors to have lost the Indiana Pacers last night. There's no sugarcoating that.
No,
there's no reason for Fred to be coming down the floor and jacking up threes like that. There's no reason for OG to call his own number that often. The first time he called his own number, he like literally went at O'Shea, took one dribble, O'Shea poked it in, OG fell over and lost the ball.
Man. Yeah, I was asking Big V, Vivek Jacob, friend of the program, in the booth after that O'Shea Brissett dunk too, because he's one of the players. Obviously, was in the Raptors system, and then the Raptors let him go. And I was like, who do we let him go for, basically? And I guess he's Global Jam. The announcement about Global Jam yesterday.
I did. I'm really excited because I had a great time at Global Jam last summer.
Yeah, Global Jam was great. So yesterday, Sportsnet and Canada Basketball announced the return of Global Jam, the world-class international basketball showcase. That's going to be in Toronto from July 12th to the 16th. So the event's going to be highlighted by the 5-on-5 under-23 basketball tournament featuring women's and men's teams from around the world. It's going to take place at Malachi Flynn's home, Mattamy Athletics Center. And teams are going to compete in the round robin July 12th to the 15th. And then the gold medal game is going to take place on July 16th. And you can go to globaljam.ca to check out all the ticket information. So it's exciting.
Yeah, obviously this is a plug, but this is not a plug for me. Like, no. I loved going to Global Jam last summer. Yeah, it was a really fun time.
No one asked me to do this. I actually just wanted basketball fans to know because I think it's a very exciting event.
Last summer, Bobby and Masai were there. That was famously the time when you pressed Bobby to show him your hip.
Oh, God.
It was during the height of the KD trade rumors.
I will just not show up to this Bobby event at this point, now that you've listed out my history with Bobby.
You pulled up on him. Literally, Bobby was like, hey, what up?
I shook Bobby's hand last night.
He's always nice to us. Yeah. And then you're like, yeah, let me see that phone, man. And he was like, what? He's like, don't let me see that phone, man. Let me see those KD proposals. And then he literally disappeared behind the curtain.
Honestly, I'm not going to lie.
Run away from you.
I was moving real funny last summer. But
Masai was there.
Yeah,
Shea was there. It's just cool to see the entire Canada basketball community come together.
You're bearing the lead, bro.
What's the lead?
I was starstruck because Jalen Harris walked in.
Okay. All right, yeah. So Jalen Harris was there. He was part of the
Everybody's trying to
shooting
take
stars at that
photos with
time.
Scotty Barnes.
Oh yeah,
And
Scotty was there too.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I
and
remember.
then I was like, yo, should I go say what up to my guy?
Scotty Barnes.
There we go,
There
baby.
we go.
Once a show. That's the free bingo square on the Raptors show bingo.
Oh yeah,
you know what? Actually,
we're gonna do that.
You know
We're
what?
gonna do that.
We made fun of the Raptors.
We're gonna make fun.
We carefully observed the trends of the Toronto Raptors and put them into a bingo card.
We're gonna do it for ourselves.
We should do it for
platter.
the show.
Yeah, the poo poo platter. Yeah, for sure. We make fun of ourselves every day. It's important to laugh. It's just important.
No, it
to
really
laugh.
is, man.
Yeah.
That's why I had like a super, irate React pod last night. Saw like 200 comments on it on Reddit when I woke up this morning. I was like, oh no, this is not going to be good.
That many comments?
Yeah, people were really upset and people really vibrated with the show.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for, I guess, sharing that. But that's why I woke up this morning and I was like, all right, it is what it is. I'll watch back the film. I sat down at my desk. I had a, what did I have? Soup from Tim Hortons with a sesame bagel.
My favorite spot. You know that.
Yeah,
Almost took Nick Kyprios's coffee yesterday. My apologies.
Yeah, that was strange. And I was sitting down and I'm watching the first quarter and I'm clipping the things and I had to just pause. Like I actually at the end of the first quarter, I just had to like sit and just like do a breathing exercise.
I was just gonna recommend a breathing exercise. Yeah.
Shouts to the goat. Unnamed goat.
Before we take the break, can we just spend 2 minutes on the aftermath of the Matt Devlin bubble tea segment?
Oh yeah.
From yesterday. So it was very well received. I believe this is our time to transition into our Fung Bros era. What if we have every Toronto media member that comes in now just has to try a simple Chinese item? Thoughts? Are you ready to transition?
Salute to the Fung Bros.
Because I've always said this is the next era. I guess I've been saying it's for me, but I'm trying to rope you into it.
Well, first off, I think there's a longer discussion we had about sort of like the public media spaces that Asian Americans were featured on.
Oh God.
And so
Okay.
YouTube space was
Coming
very
in May,
important.
Asian Heritage Month.
So like,
yes.
like when they started like 10, 12 years ago, like it was a big thing.
I'm
and
just
I
saying
salute them. I recommend all
I'm
their
just saying
work.
it's very popular.
However, I just felt like for us, like we were just Asians who like basketball.
Okay. So this is a long way of saying no.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a very polite way of saying
you're
no.
hard out like Nick Nurse, like the
By the way, the
Raps in
Fung Bros,
first round.
true hoopers.
Oh yeah, I'm aware.
Oh no, they're hoopers.
I'm aware.
Yeah.
And Devlin
They
did
could
ask. Devlin did ask us about the origin of bubble tea. Like, what was the first
go
spot?
Ahead, go ahead.
So,
Yeah.
friend of the community, friend of the program, and friend in real life, Joseph Cacharo of The Score, actually messaged after and said that he believes the first bubble tea spot was the Green Grotto, which was downtown in the early 90s and then moved to Warden and Steeles. And because he would go there frequently.
This is the migration of Asians.
No,
in
he
Toronto.
would
You
go
start
there
in Chinatown and you move to Warden and Steeles.
Yeah, so right at Scarborough. So he would go there as a teenager and talk to the owners, and he said that the owners would tell him that they were the first place, like the first bubble tea spot to open there. So just to tie a bow.
That's a
on
local
that.
history thing too, because again, I think Matt was asking us about the general history of boba, and I was like, I actually don't really know all of it, but
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, I don't mind. I did like the idea of people coming in and trying stuff. So well, I mean,
No,
Grange is not coming to the studio tomorrow, but we'll get Grange to try.
Grange is gonna be on in 5 minutes. What are you talking about tomorrow? Today.
What?
We have Michael Grange today.
I know.
Oh, you said tomorrow.
Oh, sorry. On the other side of this break.
We can check with Grange what he wants to try next time he comes in the studio.
Yeah, there we
can
go.
do that.
Okay, well, we are gonna take that break, I guess. By the way, to people, I see the people in the chat. No, I was not saying Reddit was negative about it. No, I saw a lot of people were vibrating with what I was saying. I was just surprised because typically you don't see the React pods posted with that much discussion. But anyway, I appreciate it. Yeah, we are going to take that break. I've been your host, Willow, and you've been listening to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. On the other side of this break, we will find out more info on what happened at practice with Michael Grange. Welcome back to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Ben Lou. I'll continue to be joined by producer and co-host Alex Wong, and we are joined on the line by friend of the program, Michael Grange. Grange, what's good? How was practice today?
It was riveting. Well,
yeah.
You missed a big day. Really big day.
I know it's tough. Usually when the weather is nice, I could scoot over. I'm always there at practice. But
Same.
Today it was rainy. It was dark, and I thought about that game last night. I thought about all those little, in and out dribbles for TJ McConnell before he pulled up for mid range, and he made all of them. I thought it would probably be wise to skip practice, but I didn't want to bring the mood down. So, how was the mood at practice, Grange? Was there any injury news at least?
The only injury news is everyone's still injured. So Scotty Barnes, you probably saw some clips. Him and Delano Banton, who still has his left thumb wrapped, were being very careful to do right-handed drills without using their left hand.
Wow.
So yeah, Scotty actually had something approaching. You could almost call it a cast on his left hand, so left wrist. So he remains day to day, but I don't think he's playing tomorrow. That's my big insight.
All right.
And then I didn't see any sight of Gary or Precious, and they are also apparently they didn't practice, so apparently are day to day.
That's really unfortunate. That is really unfortunate because the Raptors do not have that much depth, and I
was going to say, yeah. You don't think they have the depth that they could kind of overcome that in the short term?
Well, I mean, they did bring in trusted veteran Will Barton, and so far he hasn't clicked. But look, the game's not about Will Barton. I think it's about the other little details that weren't really hammered. I'm curious what the conversations were, in terms of the questioning to Nick at practice.
Well, it was interesting talking to him, and he was pretty adamant about, and we've heard him talk about this kind of stuff before, that the process was good. The expected shots were good. The creation was good, and what did they shoot, like
7 of 34 for 20.6% from three.
Something bad. So and then on the other hand, he allowed in the stretch. I think everyone acknowledged that the first quarter was not ideal, and just rewatching some of it now, there was some not great defensive effort, I would say. And then in the fourth, he kind of really came down to make or miss. He said, the four, I think Pacers hit 4 big threes. He thought 2 of them were really well defended. One of them was a pure breakdown, and one was kind of like an in between. And obviously, if you're trying to win important games and trying to come back against a team, even though you're not really all that deep in the hole, those little breakdowns add up. But overall, I think he certainly wasn't coming down on his team. He wasn't crushing anybody. I think it's a theme that we've seen over and over again is this group has really very little margin, and one or two things go wrong, and one or two guys are out of the lineup, and they can lose to anybody at their best. When they're kind of not firing for whatever reason, they're pretty vulnerable, and we've seen that, I think, enough times this season to understand what we're looking at.
Yeah. Do you agree with that make or miss thing, though? Because, Will and I were talking about in the first segment just about some of the shot selection yesterday from, Fred and OG. And I feel like that's been a thing that's, stood out throughout the season, too. Just, getting the best shot on offense and things like that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers would suggest either, they're just an incredibly unlucky offensive machine, or they can't shoot, it's, you look at their effective field goal percentage before, let's just use the All-Star break. That's basically the kind of before and after with Jakob Poeltl, and there's been they are the exact same team. They're 28th in their own effective field goal percentage before the All-Star break. They're 28th now. They're just a little titch above Charlotte and Houston. And, you look at some of the shots Fred was taking down the stretch, probably not ideal. But I think sometimes, especially when he kind of steps into those early transition threes, which are open, I think some of it's an acknowledgement that, the deeper they go into their clock, the less likely they are to get a good shot. And, and I just wonder if, on some level, they certainly play a strategy or like their approach is kind of really tells you that they don't believe in themselves offensively, because everything they do, even now that they've added, a pretty high quality finisher in Pirtle, is still about generating maximum possessions, still about trying to turn people over, still about kind of crashing the offensive glass. Like, it's all about a relatively high risk strategy that, it makes sense if you don't believe that you can affect teams offensively other ways. And, that's whether that's true or not. I mean, that's certainly what they think of themselves. I mean, that's why they're doing it.
Right. No, I mean, I think that's very true. And I think, I definitely wouldn't say it was a make or miss league last night. I mean, yes, the Raptors definitely shot the ball poorly, and Indiana got a lot of their threes to fall. But, I mean, look, the Raptors got to the free throw line 39 times last night, which is good process. But, I mean, yikes. If you're not winning a game when you take 39 foul shots, I really don't understand what's going on. I think, in terms of the positives from last night, because we obviously been hammering a lot of the other angles, I thought Pascal obviously took over in the fourth quarter, which was really nice. I thought he got going in the third quarter as well. What have you made of Pascal recently, where I think over the course of the road trip, he was definitely in a slump, but it seems like he's mostly out of it now, and he's gone back to being sharp?
Yeah, no, I think he's been really good. That road trip was really weird. He was terrible. I think there was a bit of a disconnect where, I wrote something where his usage numbers in the fourth quarter fell off a cliff. Like, he just didn't get the ball, and it kind of got worse as the trip went along. It'd be interesting to know exactly what the process is that if that's kind of organic, or if it was a little bit intentional, or if it's a little bit Siakam not really asserting himself. And I think what he did early, the first few games of this homestand, is, he was way more, and even last night, just way more willing to just go and do some dirty work, to go get a ball, get him going, get on the break. Like, everything can't just be handed to you. You're not, it's not like it's Kawhi Leonard and they're just going to hand you the ball and go, lay it flat and go 1-4, and that's your job. Like, that's not him. It can't be him. And, sometimes I think in the absence of that, there wasn't a lot of activity from Siakam, and I think he's been a lot better with that. And coincidence or not, with Scotty out, all of a sudden the ball's in his hands a lot more, and he was a really effective offensive player. So, I think they're key, and what they've really got to come to some kind of understanding about is, you've got four guys who, to varying degrees, need and deserve the ball, and Siakam, Barnes, Fred, and OG, and there just haven't been. It makes sense that not all four of them are going to thrive in the same day. Otherwise, you'd be scoring, 150 points a night. But there's way too many instances where only two of those guys seem to be able to have good games at the same time. And, if that can't get kind of ironed out, it's not an issue at the moment because Barnes is out. We'll see for how long. But, if this team or group as designed is going to thrive, it's got to be where, it is a fairly equal opportunity offense. And maybe a couple of guys' usage bumps up higher than others, but somewhere in there, Barnes has to really excel. Siakam has to really excel. And, OG and Fred have to find room to excel too. And that's sort of been the challenge with the formula they've adopted.
Right. Now, the one constant, it feels like, is Yak. Obviously, most defensive attention is paid towards the other guys. And I think Yak has been an excellent counter to a lot of that. Like the first half, for example, the pick and roll with him and Fred was primarily the source of offense for Toronto. And in the second half, when Pascal really got going as well, I thought Yak was still able to support him in different ways. He finishes the game 10 of 12 from the field. 36 minutes played last night. It might be the most he's played as a Raptor. Unfortunately, went 3 of 9 from the foul line and 2 of 5 from the foul line in the fourth quarter specifically. But, I mean, look, there can't be any complaints. It feels like Yak came in. He's playing great. He's got chemistry with everybody. But it hasn't really moved the needle forward for the team as a whole. Is that fair to say, Grange?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of goes back to the point I was making earlier. Like I was really surprised. I think looking at that split pre and post All-Star game, you'd think there'd be a really significant even movement in terms of either your ability to defend or your ability to score, or your efficiency of scoring, especially on the offensive side. If Pirtle, I think, what is he shooting? Like he's shooting 68% as a Raptor, right? So I mean, I know he's not getting a ton of shots, but you would think that would bump up your numbers, and it hasn't really. Like there's kind of, and I think if anyone had said that, what, Pirtle's going to come here and he's going to, I've just got his numbers in front of me here. He's going to be, 16 points, 10 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.5 blocks, a steal and a half and a block and nearly 2 blocks on, 68%. And by the way, 60%, 2% free throw shooting. Like, last night wasn't great, but he hasn't been a disaster. Like, we're going to find out what that's going to earn him in the offseason. Like, I think it's going to be not a small amount of money. And, you would have thought if you were injecting that into your lineup without taking out any rotation piece, that you would automatically be a better team. And I guess the Raptors have been a better team. Like, I think they're 9-7 in those 16 games. But it's not. I would have thought that the impact would have been even more significant than it's been, and that's why I guess a game like last night is kind of frustrating because instead of 9-7, they'd be 10-6, right? And like that's always that looks a lot more sturdy. And who knows? Maybe there's more good stuff to come. But yeah, it's a little bit mystifying that that his level of performance hasn't translated directly into, or more directly to, the bottom line.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Looking on the other side, man, Andrew Nembhard, what a game. What a story for him as well. It's just, obviously I'm rooting for the Raptors to win, but still, I am still rooting for Canada to win in basketball. And obviously, Andrew's been a part of the program already. I still remember him playing as an 18-year-old at the FIBA World Cup in China. And I think that the star player for Nick in that tournament was Kem Birch, just based on all the guys who were available. But for an 18-year-old to play a decent role and be effective at that level, at that age, is pretty impressive. Seeing him grow up now, overcome the health struggles, and really, really become a very, very good player in this league. Yeah, man, that's a great story on a Canadian basketball angle, at least.
It is a good story. Like, I mean, the crazy thing is that guy's probably going to make about $100 million, probably more. He's going to be in the NBA 10 years minimum. Like, right. It's very obvious because he's either going to progress and you're going to see more nights more consistently as he showed last night. And if you look at his game log, the last 6 games since Tyrese Halliburton's been out, like that night was a bit of an exception. Like, it was obviously one of the better games of his career, but it's been coming. Like, he was averaging, I think, 19 points a game on really good splits prior to that, and since Halliburton's been out. So, and I think what's interesting, so he's either going to become more of what he is now, and could he be a starter? I don't know, maybe have his own team type starter. But at the least, he's going to be in someone's guard rotation for as long as he wants to be, right? Like, I mean, we all know that. It's obvious. And it's a really cool thing. And I thought Fred made an interesting comment last night. Someone asked him, about how did this guy go in the second round anyway? And, probably lost a few marks for being 22 and having spent 4 years in college or whatever. And, you can imagine what Fred's answer was, right? It's like, yeah, people are idiots. They kind of, like, people should look a lot more on track record versus projectables and all of that. And that mistake gets made over and over again.
Right.
But, from a Raptors point of view, it's, that decision at the trade deadline last year to trade out of, whatever the end would have ended up in the draft, 20 or 21 or 22.
20, yeah.
In the 20 in the Thad Young deal, like, it seemed really innocent at the time. And the intentions are always good, and they're defensible typically, but man, that is proven to be a mistake. We've all talked about Walker Kessler, and man, that would have solved a lot of problems. But even if they had, what's interesting is, clearly a lot of teams wish that Andrew Nembhard had been drafted a lot higher than he was. Like it's proven to be a mistake. He's a second rounder. So if they had picked a 20 and you come out of that draft, with Kessler and maybe or whatever. Like obviously, my point is only that there were some good players available in that pocket, and the Raptors didn't get them. And and I think would they have ever taken Nembhard at 20? Like
I doubt it.
They probably wouldn't have at the time, but they should have. Right?
Yep.
And they're not the only ones that should have, but they should have. And if you kind of look bigger picture at where the Raptors are right now, they've now had 2 or 3 years now where they've just missed opportunities to add depth in a meaningful way, and it's killing them, right? And is it permanent? Like, is it fatal? Not just this year, but in years to come? I mean, we'll see. But the contrast of what they've done, Scotty Barnes aside, in the last 3 years, with the bottom of the roster through the draft or through player acquisition, versus how they built a team that won. If you go back to 15, 16, 17, what they were doing, who they were adding through that process. That's it. That's the story. And so Andrew Nembhard is. Like it's kind of cherry picking to say, man, they could have drafted Andrew Nembhard, but the flip side is, yeah, they could have, right? And he's a hell of a player.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great point. A game like last night, for example, when you think back to 2016 or 2017, let's say Colin, DeMar, or let's say in this case, JV and, DeMar Carroll and Patrick Patterson were missing due to injury, right? Other guys would step in because of the fact that, you had a guy like Pascal or a guy like Fred or a guy like Yak in the rookie years in 2017, and they're ready to sort of step up into those bigger roles, and you win a lot of those games.
100%.
And last night, you didn't have those kind of extra little boosts of energy. You end up starting Will Barton, who you just signed, out of nowhere to join your roster, and all of a sudden you're starting him too. And it's tough. And to the point with Andrew, it's just like, I don't know. I mean, my sense on this is they wanted to take Koloko the whole time. I think, like, for example, like Andrew, went 31, and we'll never know, right? Because obviously that was picked before Toronto at 33. But I'm curious, like, if both Koloko and Andrew are on the board at 33, I think they probably would have still won with Koloko. And
yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, all you heard was how good, Andrew's workout was in Toronto, and certainly Nick had great feelings for him and all of that. So who knows?
It's not Nick's choice, though, is it?
It's not Nick's choice, right? And yeah, Nick Murdoch might have burned a match with Kem Birch. But so who knows exactly?
Right, of course.
But and Koloko, look, I think Christian's going to end up being.
Yeah, of course. Bigs take longer to develop, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, at the same time, it's like the Raptors clearly have a very, very big need at the third guard, and if they had Andrew right now, who by the way is on a 4-year, $8 million deal, man, that you would solve a lot of problems. But Grange, we've unfortunately ran out of time, so we just got to call you again next time. But appreciate your help on the show, your insight, and
no worries. Anytime.
Hopefully we call you on a more happier note. I always feel like we always call you about, like, who are we going to trade or why the Raptors lose.
Come have a bubble tea with us next time.
This is what we do.
I too have never had a bubble tea.
Okay,
there we go.
Here we go. A new segment, a new recurring segment has begun.
Here comes David Fung. All right.
Thank you, Grange.
Good luck with your show next week, guys. Take care.
All right, thank you. All right, well, that does it for us today. I've been your host, Willu, and you've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Thanks once again to Michael Grange, producer and co-host Alex Wong, report producer Derek Brandale, and Jennifer Rolnick with helping with the YouTube stream. And listen to the Banter Pod because I'll be a lot happier. And we'll talk to you tomorrow.